Greetings, my friends. It is I, Dr. Jimmy. Today is Saturday, the 14th of January. I hope you all survived yesterday. Friday the 13th. Of course, if you didn't survive, you probably couldn't be watching this video. Unless you're undead or something. Oh well. At any rate, as always, in all my videos, I would like to show off my t-shirt of the day. And today I'm really proud of it. I just got this shirt. I'm wearing it for the very first time and I love it. Here it is. Hashtag Team Dumpster Mike. Yes, wonderful. Celebrating the appearance of Michael Myers in a trash dumpster at the haunted house. Halloween Hell Comes to Haddonfield, which was based on Halloween 2 at last year's wonderful Halloween Horror Nights 26 here in Orlando. It became something of a fan favourite, Dumpster Mike popping out of the dumpster. Sometimes you thought he was a mannequin and you didn't realise he'll come to life and get you. Quite wonderful. And hashtag Team Dumpster Mike became a thing on Twitter, you see. And there's this wonderful, wonderful artist. Her name is Shelby Denham. And she's done some marvellous t-shirts for Horror Nights recently. And lovely drawings of the icons. I really like her work. And quite lovely stuff. And I couldn't help but get this shirt when I saw it was available. I highly recommend Ms. Denham's Horror Nights artwork, even though she works for Disney. Nobody's perfect. Oh well. Anyway, before I continue the history of Halloween Horror Nights 23, what evil has taken root, let's talk a little bit not about the past, but the future of Horror Nights. Oh, wonderful. Yes. Already? Yes, already. Because you see, although there has been no information at all coming out about what's happening in Orlando, over in Hollywood, California, the showrunner for the event there, Mr. John Murdy, fascinating fellow, has been already talking about some of their plans and even giving out the very first clues. And these are from him, therefore they're official clues about what they're doing in Hollywood. And people in Orlando should pay attention to what's going on in Hollywood, because the trend increasingly over the years has been that IPs used in Hollywood are being shared with Orlando more and more every year. Last year, for example, all of Hollywood's event, hello Bob, all of Hollywood's event was intellectual properties. All of their mazes and the scare zone and the permanent attraction were all IPs. It was just the Terror Tram that was original, and even that had a brand name associated with it, Eli Roth. Therefore, and all 6 of the IPs in Orlando were also in Hollywood. Yes, American Horror Story, The Walking Dead, because the permanent attraction, The Exorcist, Halloween 2, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Krampus were all also mazes, and The Walking Dead in Hollywood. The only ones in Hollywood we didn't have in Orlando was the Purge scare zone and the Freddy versus Jason maze they did last year in Hollywood, and both of those had been in Orlando back in 2015. So we see then there's quite a bit of crossover. Now, because of this current trend, which seems to be continuing, and I don't think it's necessarily going to stop, we're more likely to have IP shared between the 2 parks, because then they only have to get the rights for an IP and use them in both parks instead of having, some for each park, which would be a lot more expensive. It makes sense economically. Get the same IPs, use them on both coasts. Which means, as most of their houses, in fact last year, are mazes, that's what they call them over there, most of their mazes have been IPs, and last year all of them are IPs. When Murdy starts hinting about his own mazes, there's a very good chance that we might see the same thing as a haunted house in Orlando, which is why we must pay careful attention. Now, Michael Aiello here in Orlando has been pulling back from his Twitter. In fact, the Horror Nights Twitter for Orlando isn't even done by Mike anymore. It's all been handed over to Orlando's social media team. And they're quite fun, but they're not quite as fun as Mike was in giving out little tidbits of information. In fact, they probably don't even know what's going to be released next, unless publicity and marketing tells them. But Murdy, he knows exactly what they're planning because he's the guy in charge. So when he starts tweeting, and he's still in charge of the Hollywood tweet for Horror Nights, it comes right from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And he's been tweeting quite a bit because he can't help himself. He loves being carny, as he puts it. So, earlier this year, he happened to mention that he's already been working on the treatment for the first maze. And he said, oh, it's so much more than ever before. All these pages he's been writing, all these post-it notes on his bulletin board, hundreds of them. This implies a very large maze. You know, maybe it's what we called an Uber house recently in Orlando. A mega house, an extra large maze. That's a possibility. Then he happened to mention that after he'd done all that, he was reading a script for an as-yet unreleased horror film. That implies the second maze is that unreleased horror film. Well, that means something that hasn't come out yet, like maybe The Mummy that's coming out this summer, or maybe some other film that hasn't been released yet that might be a possibility for a maze in Hollywood. Is that the second maze? Because usually he's very careful about first and second, third. So I'm wondering about that. Well then, 2017 was only 10 days old. Yes, on January 10th, which of course was Tuesday of this week. He actually went so far. Oh, I see the cat again. There she goes, jumping up there. Yes. He gave out the very first of his notorious code names. Here it is, 10 days into January, he gives the first code name for a haunted maze in Hollywood. And the code name is Lemonade. Lemonade? Wow, what does that mean? His clues are often quite twisted and convoluted, so you wonder and ponder, what the hell does lemonade mean? You know, first thing I thought of was, you know, milk, lemonade, round the corner, fudge is made, but maybe that's being a bit that's ridiculous. Willy Wonka maze, maybe? No. So I was thinking that's funny, but I couldn't help but wonder if this is the same first, he said first maze before, and it sounded like it might be a really big one, and lemonade. And I couldn't help but remember, Lemonade happens to be the name of Beyonce's recent album. And on that album, there's a song called Formation, the one about hot sauce in my purse or in my bag. They had a joke at Bill and Ted last year about that. So Beyonce's Formation video was all shot in New Orleans and includes some scenes in the video that are very reminiscent of American Horror Story Coven, the third season of that program that was set with witches in New Orleans. In fact, there she is in black, wearing a black hat and standing in front of a mansion like she's the Supreme or something. I think Beyonce is the Supreme, don't you? Yeah, and there's some scenes of her with some other ladies in fancy dress and in these parlors in a mansion in New Orleans. It looks like it could have come right out of Coven. And I thought, damn, because everyone's been speculating that they might do another American Horror Story mega house with the 3 seasons that they didn't use last year. Asylum, Coven, and of course Roanoke, the most recent one. And Coven would fit right in then. So is Lemonade American Horror Story? Maybe. You know, you can't really tell yet, but that's a possibility. Thinking, is that what he means by lemonade? Then, although he hasn't given out the second code word yet, he did say very recently, just the other night, another tweet, that he's working on the treatment for the second maze. And while he's working on it, he says, this is the trickiest property he's ever had to realize into a maze. Oh, it's so tricky. And people said, well, how tricky is it? Is it trickier than The Exorcist was? And he says, yes, it's even trickier than The Exorcist. So what could be so difficult and hard to make into a maze? And, you know, I was thinking about that, and I wonder, is he throwing a clue in without letting us on? Because that's the way Murdy is. He's carny. Does he mean tricky? Literally? Because he was reading a script for an as-yet unreleased horror film, and this is tricky. Could it be Trick or Treat 2? Trick or Treat 2, which is coming out possibly later this year, or maybe not till next year. That would be really tricky, though, to make a maze out of a film that hasn't even started filming yet. I mean, it'd be very difficult to do, even if he is close to Michael Dougherty and gets information from him on what the film's going to be about and he's read the script. It would still be really damn tricky if the film hasn't even been made yet to make the haunted maze and design it ahead of time. You know, so that's very, very tricky. But that could be wrong, too, because we must understand two important facts. This is a caveat I have to give you when dealing with John Murdy. First of all, although the trend has been more and more that we are sharing IPs with Hollywood. In fact, last year, as I stated, all the IPs in Orlando were also in Hollywood last year. They also had Freddy vs. Jason and The Purge, but all of the IPs we had, they had. But not necessarily all the IPs they have, we have every year, and sometimes they're different, and sometimes the one we had before, and sometimes it's something that we won't get till later, like Insidious. So, we don't know if these will be shared, okay? So even if we do figure out the clues that Murdy has, doesn't mean we'll see them in Orlando, although it's probable, it's not 100% guaranteed. So you have to hold that. And the other warning is that Murdy is carny, and his clues are never that easy to solve. They're never quite so cut and dried as Lemonade, Beyonce, American Horror Story. It might be something really, really fucking twisted. For example, last year, one of his code names, he said he couldn't actually tell us the code name. That would be too easy. He would give us clues to figure out what the code name is. This code name was the name of a person, and this person's first name was the same as a vintage Disney animated character, a vintage Disney female animated character. He gave us that. And the second name, the last name, the surname of the person, was a name that you might see in a music shop. Not a record store, a CD shop, but a music store that sells music supplies and music and instruments. And so that was difficult, but after a lot of thinking, I figured out, wait a minute, Minnie Mouse, Minnie, and Pearl, which is a brand of drums, Minnie Pearl. Now, Minnie Pearl's a celebrity that a lot of young people might have never heard of, but she was back in the 70s on a program called Hee Haw, and she was a silly sort of country western lady with a price tag hanging from her hat long before it ever became gangster. And she would go on and always shout out her famous catchphrase, "Howdy!" And therefore, howdy, Captain Howdy. And so through this convoluted process, we get to Captain Howdy and The Exorcist. So that's what that was all about, The Exorcist. But what a way to get to The Exorcist. So you have to realize then how messed up Murdy's clues often are. Therefore, Lemonade may have something completely different than American Horror Story. Other people have talked about Cabin Fever or even The Walking Dead because of references to Lemonade in those films and programs. But Walking Dead is rather a silly guess because there's a permanent Walking Dead attraction. It wouldn't be the code name for a maze that he's just now writing a treatment for because they're gonna. I'm sure the Walking Dead attraction will be incorporated into Horror Nights like it was last year, but that's something that's done. He doesn't have to put out a code name for that. That would be doesn't make sense. So I negate that, but it may not be. It may be something else entirely. It could be something really weird. Now the second one, we haven't got a code name for yet, but tricky might be a clue, but it might not. It may just be something that he's having some issues getting it realized into a maze. But I do need to put that out. You never know when you're dealing with Murdy. It takes a lot of figuring out. Now that I'm done talking about that and the possibility. Oh, there's other guesses. People have thought the tricky one might be Hellraiser. I'm not sure if that's just wishful thinking. I don't think that'd be that difficult to make into a maze, actually. I think it'd be rather simple. Yeah. Lots of fun, too, actually. Like to see that someday. I don't know what the deal is with Clive Barker and the rights. All right, so let's proceed. Also, there's that whole Weinstein business from Dimension. You have to deal with them as well, and they're awful. Okay, so let's continue. Let's go back then to Halloween Horror Nights 23. This is, in fact, I didn't say it before and I should have, this is the 20th video in my series on the history of Halloween Horror Nights 23, back in 2013. And I'm already about halfway through the video before I even get to it. Isn't that silly? But, in Halloween Horror Nights 23, I had talked in the previous video about Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure. And I left out one of the gags. I had forgotten to mention it. And I think I should bring it up because I liked it. During that whole bit with J.J. Abrams and this new Star Wars and the new Star Trek. Now, back then it had been announced he'd be directing Star Wars. He'd already done a couple of Star Trek movies, and we didn't know yet how it was going to be. And they had the whole gag of the characters showing up wearing the wrong costumes. So you had Spock as Vader, and Vader wearing Spock's outfit, and all of that. Well, part of the joke, somebody mentioned Benedict Cumberbatch, because he was, of course, in that Star Trek movie where he played Khan, which was the one that came out in 2013. Except nobody could get the name right. And so when the cast is saying, oh, it's, you know, Benedict Bandersnatch or Cumberbitch or all kinds of silly names, and they couldn't get it just right, and everyone's trying to say how it should be pronounced and getting it wrong worse and worse. And finally Ted goes, I think it's pronounced monkey balls. And at that point, a window in the cabin opens up, and it's Cumberbatch himself. And he's dressed, of course, in the wrong outfit, not as Khan, but as R2-D2, with a little helmet and a thing like he's R2-D2. And he goes, that's Cumberbatch! 3 damn syllables. Cumberbatch. Yes, so that was the Cumberbatch joke. Blueberry balls. All right, so now there's something else about Bill and Ted in 2013 which I must address. As you know, for many years, not only did they present the show at Universal Studios Florida and Islands Adventure, of course, a few years, but they've presented the show in Orlando ever since 1992. But intermittently, it was usually in Hollywood. And unlike Orlando, where they say you can't film the show, they always let people film the show so you could always see the videos. And so as addition to watching all the shows live in Orlando, I saw the shows in Hollywood on YouTube. And I rather enjoyed them. And sometimes they did some stuff better. Usually ours was better, but especially the sexy dancers. They always had sexier dancers. Sorry, guys, here, I love you, but the ones over there sometimes were really hot. You know, so I like that. But there was an incident during the show in 2013. About halfway through the event in Hollywood, a fellow had seen the show. It was a completely different show that year. There were times when the shows are almost identical, but by 2013 they had very different shows on different scripts. And the show in Hollywood had some of the same pop culture they used in Orlando in 2013, obviously, but they had a very different storyline. And apparently part of the storyline for Hollywood's version of the show involved Superman being outrageously gay. Now, there was a fellow attending the show called, I don't know his real name, but he uses a pen name of Jamie Lee Curtis Tate. Not to be confused with any actual actress or baroness by that name, but Tate is apparently his real surname. But he calls himself Jamie, maybe it's Jamie Tate, but he puts in Lee Curtis in the middle to make it sound, ooh, look at me, I'm Jamie Lee Curtis Tate. And he went to see the show, and he didn't like it. And apparently he said it was racist and misogynist and sexist and, worst of all, homophobic, especially the bit about Superman. And he said it was a terrible, offensive, bad, wrong show. It should be cancelled. It's evil. It's going to cause all kinds of bad things. Awful, awful, awful. And he wrote this up in his little insipid and rather boring and offensive blog that he puts out. And no one would have ever heard anything more about it, because who reads this idiot's blog? No one. But there's this thing called the Huffington Post. You may have heard of it. They tend to scan the internet until they find something interesting, and they put it on the Huffington Post. And the Huffington Post then becomes something that's read nationwide. It brings a lot of stuff that might never have been heard of out into the mainstream. And because they picked up that article and published it in the Huffington Post, it was seen nationwide. It became a big deal. People who never, ever, ever would have read Jamie Lee Curtis Tate's ridiculous blog suddenly read this article. Oh my God, the show is racist and sexist and misogynist and homophobic. It's terrible. It's this politically incorrect, awful show. We must do something. And it caused a big controversy about the show. Worst of all, it came to the attention of, I don't know the person's name, but whoever it is who actually owns the rights of Bill and Ted, the whole franchise. And when he heard about it, he kind of blew his stack. Because, you see, he's been planning for years to do a third Bill and Ted feature. Yes, he wants to do a new Bill and Ted, get Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter back. He can't get George Carlin. It's a bit late for that. But he's going to get the two guys and have them play Bill and Ted like in their 50s. And they have kids of their own who are teenagers, and bring back the whole Bill and Ted thing, and why they haven't saved the world yet with the Wild Stallions the way they were supposed to, and time travel and all kinds of whatever. The film was supposed to be, they were planning to make the film for years now. They still haven't, and I don't know if they ever will. But that was his hopes, you see. And this is going to damage the franchise. And so that caused him to freak out, because it would hurt the brand. Oh my God, can't hurt my brand. And so he went to Universal and said, stop it right now. You're damaging the reputation of Bill and Ted with this awful offensive shit that you're putting on. Stop it. Cancel the show. You are not going to do any more Bill and Teds ever again. No. I'm getting my lawyers and suing you. Get rid of Bill and Ted. No more Bill and Ted Excellent Halloween Adventure ever. Nah! And that's what is threatened. And that caused, oh fuck. So Universal canceled the show in Hollywood. Right in the middle of the event. It was not performed for the remainder of Halloween Horror Nights 2013 in Hollywood, and has never returned to Horror Nights in Hollywood ever since. They didn't have Bill and Ted in 2014, 15, or 16, and I don't know if they ever will do Bill and Ted again in Hollywood. It was killed. Furthermore, we escaped barely escaped losing the show in Orlando as well, because he wanted us to cancel the show in Orlando also, not just Hollywood. There would have been no more Bill and Ted ever again anywhere if he had gotten his way at that point, because he was that pissed off. But the Orlando people assured him, look, it's a completely different script. Completely different. It's not the same show at all. See? Different script, different words. See that? They're not saying the same thing. We don't have that joke about gay Superman in the Orlando show. There he's just violent and kind of drunk. But he's not gay, so don't worry about that. In fact, the show has nothing offensively gay in it, nothing to offend people. We even condemn racism. See, we make fun of racists. Paula Dean. We don't encourage anything that's racially offensive. There's nothing sexist here. It's all good. And so, in fact, to be honest, I saw the show on video that was causing the controversy, and I was not offended. I'm a gay man. I was not offended by that. I didn't find that homophobic. And most of the people who saw the show online tell me they didn't find the show offensive. Women saw it, said they weren't offended. Hispanics, African Americans saw it, they weren't offended. There wasn't really anything racist at all. This was just this Jamie Lee Curtis Tate person making a lot of shit up to get attention is what it was. But anyway, straying from the point, they assured the guy it's a different show in Orlando. And so he said, okay, you can keep doing it, but I'm watching you! Fortunately, they were able to continue the show, and so it did continue in Orlando through the end of the event. And they actually got a contract signed for Orlando, not Hollywood, to continue doing the show, which is why it still happened. Bill and Ted continued in 2014, 15, and 16, and hopefully for years to come. Thank God. The bullet missed us in Orlando, although in Hollywood, no more Bill and Ted. And let me tell you, this also had other negative repercussions. The actors told us they were so frightened of this that they tried to stick to the script and not do any of the clever ad-libs or anything new or exciting in the remaining shows. They tried to stay as close to the script as possible for fear of that they might incur the wrath of the rights holder. I did not see the final show on the last night because on the last night I was in Portugal and I couldn't see it. It's kind of fought along. My eyes aren't that good anyway, but it's certainly not. I don't have telescopic vision. I can't see through the crust of the earth to see a show in Orlando while I'm over in Portugal. So no, I missed the last show, but I had been told before the show happened that they might not actually do even the more outrageous stuff they have been hoping to do on that last show. Again, I didn't see it, but I believe that even if they were able to go off script a bit on that last show, the last performance, they tried to tone it down a little bit so that it, for fear of causing problems. So, as a result of that, I think the last show of Bill and Ted in 2013 in Orlando was not as outrageously awesome as it could have been. And that's a sad thing, too. And what's really upsetting about this to me is this asshole, this Jamie Lee Curtis Tate. He presents himself as a crusader for gay rights. He didn't do a damn thing for gay people by printing this shit. No, he didn't save anyone's rights. What he did was he put gay people out of work, because I know that there were actors and dancers in that show in Hollywood that were gay. And not all of them, of course, but a lot of them were, because it's a theme park, and theme park workers always have more than higher percentages of gay people working there than the general population. And those people lost work because of him. That's not helping gay people, that's hurting them. Furthermore, he's a hypocrite. Oh, he's so concerned about racism and sexism and judging people by these superficial qualities. You remember Martin Luther King said you should judge a man by the quality of his character, not the color of his skin, right? So this man, though, this Jamie Lee Curtis Tate, and I don't like that name either. I mean, I find it a bit offensive as a gay man to call yourself by a female actress's name. That's kind of, giving into stereotypes. But he says, you know what he does? What he likes to do? He goes down to Hollywood Boulevard and he takes pictures of himself vomiting on the stars on Hollywood Boulevard of people he doesn't like. And he says he's doing this because they're evil, wrong, bad, horrible, reprehensible, deplorable, awful people who don't deserve to have a star on Hollywood Boulevard, because they're bad people. And why are they bad? Because they don't meet his aesthetic values. They're too fat. They have bad teeth. That they wear the wrong type of glasses, or they don't wear the properly stylish clothes or do the right hairstyle. They got a bad haircut. He's judging people on their physical appearance, making moral judgments based on their physical appearance. How the fuck is that different than judging a person based on the color of their skin? It's judging people by the way they look instead of who they are. He's a hypocrite and a liar. He should be burnt at the stake. No, don't get crazy, Jimmy. No, and he fucked up the Bill and Ted show. So he's a reprehensible person, and hates him forever. And the Bagginses. No, sorry, my inner Gollum is coming out. All right, and I've talked all the way through this, and I haven't even got to Legendary Truth. So that completes part 20, and it's a bit silly and ranty, but sorry, that's what happens when you piss on my Bill and Ted. And we continue with Legendary Truth in part 21.